I was a member of what we call the IC, the intelligence community. And during my time in the intelligence community, I learned a lot of really helpful things that revolve around. Total revenue is all the money that the company sells. So all the sales for the company for that month. Our total cost of goods sold are the expenses that it takes to sell that. And that problem will be solved really one of two ways: by either reducing the cost of the work or the amount of sales. If everything looks good and we don't want to dig in, then I'm going to move to the next P&L for the next company, and I'm going to do the same thing. What's up? Welcome back to Diehard Entrepreneur Stories. I'm your host, Devin Ramos, and today I'm going to talk about how I use a P&L to get things done. This is something that I wish early on when I first started in business, somebody would have showed me. So I'm sharing it with you, and you're going to see how I use it as an entrepreneur to get things done in my companies. And let's talk about that. So what is it that I'm doing? Okay, right now, for the most part, there's like three major things that I'm doing. I own a cleaning company, Made in America Cleaning Services, a real estate company, Simplify Real Estate, and a consulting company, Forward Factor. So in Made in America Cleaning Services, in all fairness, I am not the CEO. I have a CEO. It is my wife. She's an amazing CEO. And we have managers and other people heavily involved in that company that help out. For the most part, I participate in business development, and we're in the process of expanding locations. Simplify Real Estate, I'm more so the operator. I have downsized my staff, and so a lot of that falls on me right now. And I'm more active in that company than I am in the cleaning company. And then we have our consulting. Within Forward Factor, we help other entrepreneurs identify the major problems in their company. We call these constraints, and help them strategize, come up with an effective plan, and implement that plan to grow. So that's what I got going on. And I use this framework in every company to help make decisions. I have a bookkeeper, I have an accountant. I don't do those sorts of things, but I do not have a CFO. And so I play CFO, and I have learned this process during that time. So system I'll share with you today is my system. It works for me. It is tried. It is tested. It is true. It is efficient, and it is simple. So I want to share it with you. Now, where did I learn this system? Where did it come from? A lot of trial and error, and really from the military. So I was a member of what we call the IC, the intelligence community. And during my time in the intelligence community, I learned a lot of really helpful things that revolve around analysis and processing data and targeting and so on and so forth. So I took a little bit of it from all those things. So I learned this from the military, and then tried and tested it over and over and over, and got a desired result. Two of those. First, it is problem solving, looking at the big picture and then working to the granular details. So we call this going big to small. The second is working backwards from the end to the beginning. And both of these concepts really allow us to move effectively and focus on what matters most, and then address the details as necessary. So that's what we're going to do here. All right. So let's dive in. Okay, here we have our profit and loss statement, or our P&L. This is for our example service company over the month of March. So if you're not tuned into YouTube and you're just listening to this, I have a example P&L in front of me. So first thing I'm going to do, if you see here on page 2, you see a highlighted box marked with an A. Scrolling up to page 1, you see another highlighted box marked with a B. What you're seeing here is I have net income highlighted on the bottom, that's marked with A, and gross profit highlighted on top, that's marked with B. Why? Moving big picture to small, we want to focus on the biggest things that matter most first. The first most important thing is our net income. Second most important thing is our gross profit. That's why we highlighted these. That's what you're seeing here. So if you're looking at net income, you will see on this P&L roughly there is 20,000 net income, and you will see a net income margin of 29%. So the net profit of this company, the most important thing, this is why we do what we do in business for the net profit at the end of the day, is 29% and $20,000. That is respective of our top line, which you see marked as C on this P&L. Again, if you're not tuning in, you would see $70,000. So that's how we're getting that 29%. So that's the first thing that we're looking at. Okay. And both of these numbers, the margin percentage and the 20,000 hard number, are numbers that over time develop. So they mean nothing without context. We need context here. In and of itself, they really mean nothing. But once we start to look at other details, then they start to matter. Okay, so this 29%, to give you an idea, for a service-based company, with what I'm familiar with, typically we want to see between 10 and 30% net profit margin. I know that's a big spread, but anywhere between 10 and 30% is going to be considered good for a company doing less than 8 figures, which is where this company's at. Then we're going to look over at the number. We see 20,000. Again, looking at that 20,000, that really means nothing in and of itself. If you have high margin, but a low amount of money, it could be enough. Maybe not. Depends on how much money you want to put in your pocket. If you see a high amount of money, but a low margin, that could be a good thing, having high money, but then with low margin, it might be a bad thing. We might be wasting a lot of time, effort, resources, so on. So they are respective, not just of each other, but the other numbers within the P&L. I cannot stress that enough. So we look at the A. I'm going to get a quick check and see, are my numbers roughly within where I want? And do that within a minute or two. And I'm going to immediately identify if they're around where I need them to be. This has been established over time. Again, I know that 20,000 based on where this company needs to be is pretty decent, and 29% for where this company needs to be is pretty decent. That's something I've established over time doing this. So the next thing I'm going to jump to is that second highlighted box, and it is marked with B. It is our gross profit. Again, if you're not able to see this visually, you'll see the gross profit highlighted, and on the gross profit, you'll see a 63% for a gross profit margin of 63% and roughly $44,000. So again, these numbers in and of itself really don't tell the full story. We got to look at context. 63% could be a good thing, but if there's not enough money there, it doesn't entirely matter at the end of the day. If we have a large amount of money there, but the margin is low, that might be a bad thing. So again, we got to consider everything. But I'm going to do my second check there. Are those within tolerance? So for me, I want to see anywhere between 50% to 60% gross profit margin. And on this particular business, on this particular month, I want to see around $40,000. So we see 44,000. So that checks out to me. So immediately within the first 2 minutes, I know that we're tracking. So now what do? Well, now I'm going to dig in. So I have my P&Ls that are already prepared. They're sent to me through an automatic reporting system. Pull them up within the first couple minutes. I've already identified if I think I have a problem or if I don't think I have a problem. And now it's time to dig in. Now, whether I have a problem or not, I'm always going to dig in because I'm looking to get better. But where we're going to start again is going back to the net income. So we looked at the net income, looked at the gross to see if we're in tolerance. If everything looks good and we don't want to dig in, then I'm going to move to the next P&L for the next company, and I'm going to do the same thing. Okay. Now, in the case that I have a problem or I want to dig in, I'm going to jump back down to net income. So if you're not watching this on the screen, you're going to see I'm going back to net income where we have the 20,000 highlighted and the 29% highlighted. Okay. So a couple different things can go wrong here. And again, I want to look at, is my number where it needs to be and is my margin where it needs to be? If my number is off or my margin is off, immediately I'm going to go up to gross profit. If my gross profit number is off, then I'm going to start to problem solve. If my gross profit margin is on, then I'm going to solve for the problem between gross profit and net income. So if you're looking at this on the screen, what you're going to see is a section between gross profit and net income, and that is our expense. Some call it operating expense. These are our company expenses. I'm going to solve within that specific area. Now, if our gross profit margin is off, then the problem is going to be between our total income and our costs for that income. Okay, so let me just recap here real quick for those watching and those not watching. I'm going to look at net income and I'm going to say, do we have a problem? Yes or no. Let's say we have a problem. Immediately, I'm going to go up to gross profit and I'm going to say, is that margin and is that number within tolerance? If the answer to that is yes, it is in tolerance, then our problem probably lies within our operating expenses, somewhere in there, and we need to figure out what's going on. Yes, of course, we can always make more money. That's always going to be an answer for sure. But we have a problem within our expenses and we need to figure out what needs to happen. If we then find we don't have a problem within our expenses and there's nothing we can cut, then assuming these are all fixed expenses, yes, the next natural step is to grow our top line. In the event that we do have a problem with our gross profit, whether it's a margin that's out of tolerance or we're just not making enough money, the problem lies in either C on the spreadsheet, that is our total income or our total revenue. So the problem lies with C, or the problem lies with D. Again, looking at the P&L, if you can't see it, that is our total cost of goods sold. So what are these two things? Total revenue is all the money that the company sells. So all the sales for the company for that month. Our total cost of goods sold are the expenses that it takes to sell that. So this looks different for every company. If it's a product, it looks different. If it's a service, it could be labor, it could be supplies. If it's a piece of real estate, it could be the renovation costs, it could be the utilities, so on and so forth. These are just the costs for that specific sell to be made, or for the cells to be made, okay? So we're going to start to look there if our gross profit margins are off, because if our gross profit margins are off, that's really the first big problem that we can solve. And that problem will be solved really one of two ways: by either reducing the cost of the work, what it takes for us to produce, or the amount of sales. Okay. So we either have a problem with the sales or the problem with the costs, or it could be a mix of both. So there's a couple different ways that we can solve that. We can look to optimize efficiency in our cost of goods sold, so what it takes for us to produce that sell. We could also do more of those sells. We could also increase our prices so that we can do the same amount of sells. These are all different options for different problems. If we have an issue with our margin is too high on our cost of goods sold. So our gross profit margin is low. If we simply do more sells, assuming it's going to cost us the same amount to do those sells, that's not going to help margin. Our number, this 44,000, if you're looking at the P&L, is going to go up, but our margin is going to stay the same. If we have a problem with margin and we need to drive that margin up on our gross profit, looking at this B line, the best way to do that is going to be to simply increase prices, because we're going to get more on line C, where we see our top line revenue, 70,000, and we should stay roughly within the same margin of expense to produce that new top line revenue. And ultimately, it's going to lead to more gross profit. So then we would see that margin go up, our gross profit margin go up. When that happens, that puts more money in the company before all the company expenses start to come out. So these are a couple examples of how we can problem solve here. So again, to recap, we look at net income. Do we see an appropriate margin? Do we see an appropriate number? If no, then we're going to solve for the problem by going to gross profit. Look at gross profit. Do we see a margin that we like that's within tolerance? Do we see a number that we like within tolerance? If yes, then the problem is within the expense section between gross profit and net income. If no, then we're going to go above to total income and total cost of goods sold and solve for the problem there. All right. If our gross profit is off, really, we can do one of two things. We can become more efficient and reduce expense, or we can do more sales. How do we do more sales? We can actually sell more people, or we can just simply increase prices, and that's going to have an effect on our efficiency or our cost of goods sold, driving down that margin. If the problem lies within the expense section, what can we do there? Well, there's really two things once again. Assuming these are fixed expenses, if we need to drive down the margin of our total expenses, we can do that by more top line revenue coming in, or we can do it by cutting expenses. So very similar, you'll see very similar pattern with how we solve for the problem on the top part of the P&L. We also can look to identify if our gross margins are appropriate, we're producing enough gross profit, but something is happening with that gross profit and we're left with not enough. We could have a significant expense that could cut the bleeding right away. So as I said earlier, yes, we want to make more money. I say that really in jest because oftentimes when a company is bleeding out, I'll hear other entrepreneurs say, you just need to make more money. It's like, yeah, that's the obvious. We know we need to make more money, but what can we do like right now? Like what can I do like within the next 15 minutes, the next day, so on and so forth. And sometimes we have these expenses that are bleeding us out. And we find those under the expenses between gross profit and net income. Quite often what I see is it's payroll. So it's maybe an employee that the company is just not ready for or is not producing. Or I also see it under marketing and advertising. It might be a marketing channel that's just not producing. So those could be easy wins when we're looking at this. If we see that our gross profit margin is within tolerance and is good, but our net profit margins aren't, and we see that we're producing an adequate amount of revenue, or we can't up our revenue overnight by increasing prices or something like that, then we can go down to expenses and we can say, okay, out of these expenses, which ones stick out for us? So if you're looking at the P&L here, or if you can't see the P&L, what you'll see is a couple numbers pop up higher than others. So the first is payroll expenses, $11,000. The other expenses are roughly around $2,000, but we have $11,000 there. So if I thought I had a problem, my problem might be within payroll. On this particular one, marketing is pretty similar to the rest of the expenses. But if we saw $5,000 or $6,000 there and we're not quite producing enough revenue, we might want to dig in to see what our return on our ad spend is and figure out if our marketing's our problem. And that's how we would want to dig in. All right. So hopefully that's been helpful. And let me talk a little bit about what this is and what it isn't. This is not steering the ship, okay? This is checking our compass, making sure we are on azimuth. For steering the ship, what we're going to use are projections. Now, I'll cover that in a different video, but we want to make actual projections to identify a path, and then we want to execute and follow that path. This right here is about seeing if we are on path. We are looking at historicals here. I can't stress that enough because I have tried and failed many a times to steer the company with a P&L. Can't do that. You got to do it with projections so that we can be proactive. And then we're going to look at the P&Ls to check and see if we're tracking. Projections are forward looking. This is looking back. All right. So just to recap here, we're going to work big to small and backwards from the end to the beginning. We're going to start with our net profit. That's our most important we're going to look at. Then go to gross profit and start to fill in the gaps from there, figure out if we have a problem, if we don't, and dig into the appropriate section. All right, so let's take this and put this into use. I will challenge you this week to get your P&L in order if it isn't first and foremost, but if it is, to take a look at it through this lens that I presented here and see if it allows you to be quicker, faster, and dig in a more organized manner where you can make sense of things, because that's the whole reason for the P&L. And if this has been helpful for you, share it with somebody. Let them know, send it their way. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, subscribe there, follow the podcast, leave a comment, leave me some feedback. Let me know if this is helpful. Thanks for listening. Until next time, when we dive into projections, we'll see you.